Saddam Hussein's puppet parliament authorizes war in the Persian Gulf as UN Secretary General Perez de Cuellar returns home with no deal.
This is NBC Nightly News with Tom Brokaw, reporting tonight from NBC News headquarters in New York.
Good evening. Midnight tomorrow night. Nothing has changed. That remains the UN deadline for Iraq to get out of Kuwait. And with no signs it will, the White House today said any moment after midnight is, quote, borrowed time. Military action could come in a flash. There remains the possibility, and only that, of a last-minute French mission to Baghdad. NBC's John Cochran is at the White House tonight on what has become now a war watch. John, what's the latest?
Tom, if there is anyone in this White House who seriously thinks war will be averted, I don't know who it would be.
Late today, President Bush called in congressional leaders to tell them that Saddam Hussein was apparently not impressed by the votes in Congress authorizing force against him. Earlier, Secretary of State Baker, after conferring with Canada's Prime Minister Mulroney, said war now depends on Saddam Hussein.
It is the hope as well, Prime Minister of the United States, that as the clock ticks down to midnight, January 15, that there will be an opportunity to resolve this crisis peacefully and politically. But that opportunity now must come from Baghdad.
Baker's pessimism stems from the failure of the UN Secretary General's peace mission to Baghdad. Today, Perez de Cuellar expressed in colorful terms why his talks with Saddam went nowhere.
Well, you know, you have an expression in English, you need two for tango. And then I want very much to dance, but I didn't find any nice lady for dancing with.
European community diplomats decided today they will not even try to send a peace mission to Saddam. But France's President Mitterrand made an 11th hour bid by having his diplomats at the UN prepare a peace proposal for the Security Council to consider. But no one at the White House is enthusiastic, and congressmen who met with the president reflected the gloom here.
Mood is somber, and you know, he sees no possibility of Hussein backing down.
And the reason here at the White House they're not enthusiastic about the new French peace plan is that it doesn't seem to be new. It seems to contain elements which Saddam Hussein has already rejected. Tom?
Thank you very much, John Cochran at the White House tonight. The Iraqi ambassador to the United States, Mohammed al-Mashhad, is heading home, recalled by his government. The ambassador will leave behind a skeleton staff in Washington. Saddam Hussein had his hand-picked parliament at work in Iraq today, and not surprisingly, he got what he wanted. NBC's Tom Aspel is in Baghdad tonight.
Iraq's National Assembly today in emergency session. The motion carried to grant Saddam Hussein constitutional powers to guarantee peace or to wage war. House Speaker Saadi Mahdi Saleh.
He is steady, courageous, and of course he is believing in the people and their rights, and he is ready to defend his people and his country.
It was Iraq's answer to the vote from the U.S. Congress giving George Bush authority to fight a war with Iraq. In downtown Baghdad, it's eerily normal. The main bus station is busy as usual, families getting a ride home after the day's market, men leaving for work in other towns. There is no panic, no sense of a looming war.
We're not worried because we have practiced the war, especially with the Iran-Iraq war, so we are ready to fight if that comes.
You are not afraid?
أنت خايف حجي؟
خايف. يا الله دخلك من الخوف. خوف شنو؟
I'm not afraid.
But foreigners are fleeing. At Baghdad airport this morning, the one flight out to Jordan was heavily overbooked. Many were planning to drive overland, but rumor said the border was closed. Nobody knew how long Iraqi airspace would remain open. Saddam Hussein has been meeting with Iraqi newspaper editors and publishers. He told them the last-minute visit by the UN Secretary General had offered nothing. Kuwait is part of Iraq, he said. There will be no withdrawal.
There will be no change of mind here. Unless there's an offer from the United States, this country waits for war on Wednesday morning. Tom Aspel, NBC News, Baghdad.
If diplomacy ultimately fails, as it appears likely tonight that it will, the military matchup is the next crucial question, and our Pentagon correspondent Fred Francis tonight sizes up the massive U.S. force. Fred?
Tom, within 2 days, all the combat aircraft will be ready and all the pilots ready to initiate Phase 1 of the Pentagon's war plan. In the next 48 hours, the USS America will join 3 other aircraft carriers in the northern Red Sea. Together, the 4 carriers will have almost 400 warplanes to strike targets in Iraq. The carriers Midway and Ranger will also move into the Persian Gulf with another 150 combat aircraft. The first signal that war is to begin will be electronic jamming of all frequencies in Iraq. Such heavy jamming that Pentagon sources say Iraqi radar will be blind and Iraqi radios won't work. It is expected that the U.S. will attack at night. Moonless nights are best, and that means from now until Sunday. And because the U.S. has 2,200 fighters and bombers and several dozen heavy B-52 bombers, all to be used in the first few days, many Pentagon officials are predicting a very, very short war. The reason, say Pentagon sources, Iraqi men and machines are less than they appear to be on paper. Of the 540,000 Iraqi soldiers in the Kuwaiti theater, only 150,000 are professional, hardened troops. Of the 4,000 tanks Iraq has faced off against the U.S. and its allies, only 500 are modern T-72 tanks. Of the 700 warplanes Iraq has at a dozen bases, only 148 are state-of-the-art. Less than half of those can fly at night. What Saddam does have is thousands of pieces of artillery and hundreds of short and medium-range missiles, which he may decide to use before the U.S. strikes. Tom?
Thank you, Fred Francis at the Pentagon tonight. And as Operation Desert Shield becomes Desert Sword, the civilians in the Persian Gulf are getting out of the way of danger. NBC's Mike Betcher is in Saudi Arabia tonight.
Southbound, away from the Kuwaiti border, was the favored direction on a desert highway. School holidays had begun, and Saudi families were putting distance between themselves and hostile missiles.
Everybody want to change areas, and some of them want to be far from the dangerous area.
Foreigners who were desperate to leave the region crowded Saudi airports. Every outbound flight was completely booked. There was cause for panic. While diplomatic efforts faltered, the U.S.-led forces revealed the existence of a giant airbase in a Persian Gulf nation outside Saudi Arabia. U.S. military press restrictions forbid reporters from disclosing the location of the base. According to one officer here, the base is home to the largest air group under a single command in modern times. Everyone was watching the clock and the calendar, waiting for the deadline.
There's a lot of tension in the air around here. Everybody's real anxious.
The sound of a growing military force was barely muted by rare desert rains.
Yeah, I'm the one who said it doesn't rain in the desert.
And it did.
And it did, 3 nights in a row.
A clan of Bedouin camped near a helicopter refueling station scoffed at the notion that the saturated sands would slow an advancing army. The Bedou nomads said the moisture would harden the soft desert floor. It's a blessing from God, proclaimed the clan's patriarch.
Just how much a friend the rain can be to the Bedouins and to the American soldiers in this desert could very possibly be tested in the coming days.
If so, the nomads, like those on the highway, will make their way southward. Mike Betcher, NBC News, Saudi Arabia.
When Nightly News continues in a moment, I'll have more on the Gulf crisis from abroad and at home.